What a week in Washington, huh? Paul Ryan issuing his demands as he wants to become Speaker of the House. Then, of course, Hillary's hearing in front of that House Select Committee on Benghazi. Lots to talk about. Let's get right to it. Beltway Buzz with our good friend, Newsmax chief political columnist and White House correspondent, John Gizzi. John, as always, thanks for your time and thanks for wearing that hip hat here on Newsmax Prime.
I think it would have been difficult to share airtime with you, JD, if I didn't wear my trademark hat.
Well, we're glad to have you. First up, Justice Department closes the investigation on the IRS targeting conservative groups. No criminal charges against Lois Lerner. What are you hearing on the Hill in the wake of this development?
Well, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that it's time Democrats stop disparaging the need for congressional hearings and investigations a la that into Benghazi, because when the legislative branch fails to do its duty, it can never depend on the executive branch to police itself. The Lerner statement today from the Department of Justice is a case in point, and I think you will see the panel that was looking into IRS abuses stepping up its work. You hear a lot from its members next week. One more thing, it's been 6 months since Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania made his request that the IRS audit Planned Parenthood. No reply as of last week.
Well, let's turn to another big story where there's been a lot of reaction. It's the day after what we might call the Hillary hearing. What has that reaction consisted of on the day after?
All right. For the most part, the national press and the punditocracy are saying that the Secretary of State came out of those hearings after 8 hours plus without too many scratches, and she survived. At the same time, there are still questions raised, for example, about why security was in such a wretched shape. You may recall the exchange on the final report between Congresswoman Martha Roby of Alabama and the former Secretary of State. I think we'll still hear a lot about Benghazi, and particularly about the role of Sidney Blumenthal, friend of the Clintons, and his attempts to do business in that troubled nation. Stay tuned.
We will stay tuned. And finally, got to talk to you about Paul Ryan. Is he going to sweet talk conservatives and, as an acolyte of amnesty, still end up as the next speaker?
Look, the very fact that he could get the Republican Study Committee and the moderate conference within the Republican Party in the House to go along with him as Speaker and the Freedom Caucus to do so, sort of, says that he pretty much will have his own ticket on his honeymoon. That honeymoon could get into troubled marital waters if he pursues an agenda beyond his own, which is reforming entitlements and finally drying up the red ink.
Well, he's got more going on, and that's that amnesty thing. Sticks in a lot of people's craw. As always, John Gizzi, we appreciate your time. Now, how do you see things? Let's check out what you've been saying to us via social media. First up, it's David writing in about the Hillary hearing. And he writes, every time she's been called to testify, she's been far less than truthful. If you or I had given the testimony she had provided previously, we would have been jailed for perjury. History shows there's absolutely no reason to think her testimony in today's hearing would be any different. Next up, we hear from Steve, who writes in about former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and his pursuit of the presidency. He writes, the Republicrats want Jeb because it will mean business as usual in the D.C. septic tank. As for the mainstream media, they really can't wait to begin the Bush-capade. Okay, there's that. And what else do we have for you? This reminder that I was out in Las Vegas earlier this week sitting down with a former Florida governor, and we will be offering you next week, right here on Newsmax Prime, portions of that exclusive interview Monday through Friday. So you be here next week. In the interim, have a great weekend. See you back here Monday night. Stay brave, stay free, stay tuned.